Okay, good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming to the May office hours. Today, we're going to be covering exhibitions, and this is kind of with the thought of some of the big projects going on in the state in the next couple of years related to the semi-quincentennial. We were kind of going to cover a lot of this last month, we are going to cover some of that going forward. But I did want to go ahead and continue to skip to the exhibitions portion of this because this is something that we can use in our daily lives, basically. The exhibitions module, I'm just going to use, as usual, I'm going to use the sandbox. I will probably hop over to Fairfield every once in a while, just because I know that I have records in there and I know this stuff that's in there. But we'll go and play in the sandbox for a little bit to come up with some examples and create some new things in here. So the one thing you'll notice, and it varies in the system, whether it's called, the module is called exhibitions or called occurrences. It's just some places the label hasn't been changed over. And at this point in time, I'm going to say we're not going to, because I keep forgetting to ask about it. So you just have to know that occurrences is exhibitions, is our term for exhibitions. So right now in the sandbox, we've got 8. Most of these are all ones that we've created for previous things. One of the thing with exhibitions is it's a very simple, straightforward, few field type of module. Let me see. I don't have a display set up with what's where, but when you go in, it only has these few pages on the left side, your normal log and your summary, and an admin info, and then basic info and relationships are the only other real pages that go with this. The basic info is the kind of just template for what your exhibition is going to be. What you decide to name it, we'll talk about that in a second. What the full name is, the curatorial description, which less a curatorial description. I usually treat it as like the blurb of the exhibit, just the summary of it. Whatever ends up for Fairfield going out to like press kind of release style things, or whatever's like on the first paragraph of the first panel intro into the show is what I put there, just kind of an overview of what the show is. Exhibition dates, this is very important, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. Exhibition location, however you want to denote this in your field. It's a free text field. It doesn't link to anything in particular. So we usually, like, it doesn't link to an actual location in your system. So however you want to denote it. Fairfield moved buildings a number of years ago, around 2007. So when I go through, I'm going to see if I have this in here at all. I know it's in Fairfield. I don't think I've got too much filled out in these, and we'll make up a new one too. Like I know in Fairfield, I'll have exhibit location, and sometimes I'll either put FHS for Fairfield Historical Society, because when we moved is when we did the rebrand of the Fairfield Museum and History Center. So if it's somewhere in there, theoretically, we should know by the name of the place of the gallery that we're in. But I just denote it that way. If it's something that we've done in the new building since we moved, I just put FMHC. And that's shorthand for us. This is not a public field necessarily, so it's not anything that'll really like confuse people. And I'll put in, FMHC, South Gallery, North Gallery. Occasionally in the past, we've used whatever that named gallery is, like the Sharps Ricker Gallery, something like that. If I have it, I'll use it, especially from the old building. But the other problem is from the old building, I don't know what those are necessarily. But I'll record it just for future reference if it's helpful to anybody. And then notes can be as notes are, whatever you want them to be. Doesn't show up anywhere else on reports. Right now, exhibitions are not public access and don't show up on the portal anyway. But notes will be something that don't show up there. Media upload. So you can put up like an image of your exhibit, or like a thumbnail or something like that. I don't know if we all have that, actually. I don't know if that's something I was playing around with in
I
the
was just going to
sandbox.
say,
So
Diane, that's not on
I don't
mine.
think it is. So I'm actually going to get rid of that because it was just a play thing, because I know everybody wants that there, and everybody wants to put 1,000 images of their exhibitions up. And it's great for just like a thumbnail of something for future, but it's something that I don't know that is absolutely necessary to be on here. Let me go in here. I should always just start out because I always end up in Fairfield anyway, so I should always just start out here. If you've done any of my exhibit ones before, you know I always go to Alice because Alice is one of the more complete exhibits that I've had up and have in the system. So this is the first page. Oh, here's my notes. What I do for notes is what our standard line is to cite the exhibit. That's what I'll put anywhere is like an exhibit history. I'll put that there. And that's one of the things that I use notes for. So I know I can always go in, copy that liner and add it to whatever. And this is where I have the FMHC. This was in our North Gallery. The relationships are just going to be the related objects that are all here. There is a hot link up here as well in the blue. So once you've got objects added to the exhibit, when you click that, it'll go to pulling up all the objects together, which is really handy. So you can go through and see what's where. And depending on what you have your display set as, you can figure out where there's stuff that you need to fix or not. I think right now, let's see. I can easily go over there. This is the bonus of being in the laptop, is being able to scroll over. Because one of the things I use this for is here, location. I'll pull up the list like that of all the images together to see if I've put everything away. Yeah, so right now, these child's gloves, the current location is still Alice in Museum Land. So I need to make sure that I go into the system and put them back in their location, wherever they need to go. Okay. But I'll use it for stuff like that. Which is why it's, oh, we're getting to the day part. So let me go. So the relationships, objects, related entities. This works well, especially if you have a either like a guest curator you want to mention, or an artist that you're focused on. We did a show, gosh, like 2-3 years ago now, that we had a particular artist that it was focused on. So it was kind of cool to put that in just as a extra thing. This is also where you can put related loans, and so ignore the sets thing, that doesn't work. That was something I was playing with in Fairfield. Related loans of stuff like we borrowed something from the Pequot Library. So you can go in and look at your loan and say what the credit line was that was needed, when we had the loan in date. I've not filled in the loan return date, even though we know we returned the loan. Stuff that always gets ahead of you with these. Who our contact is. If you really want to get down into, actual addresses and things, a lot of people aren't going to do anything this robust necessarily, because we loan things out and we definitely take a lot of loan things in for exhibits. I've filled that out more for more formalized loans. If it's somebody like Pequot, it's right around the corner. We do loans with them all the time. Lockwood Matthews, we do loans with them all the time. So I kind of don't go crazy filling this part out. So it's whatever you will need for information. And but stuff we borrowed some prints from Philadelphia, Library in Philadelphia. Library of Philadelphia, something like that, a few years ago, and it was much more formalized, and they required a lot more information from us. So I made sure to really fill these out myself for Fairfield to make sure that we had all the data there for the future and going on. And with everything else, you can go back into your relationships to get back to where you were going, or go to history. So right now we haven't borrowed anything else from them lately. Just to see Alice Museum Land was what we borrowed that from for this particular loan. Oh, so and you can get to your summary if you need a little blurb for something. And I've done it as checklist. Oops, I don't want to go all the way there. Of making sure that I've got stuff like the authorization date. Was that done? Do I have the credit line? Needing evaluation to be put in for insurance, what the note about insurance is it carried by the borrower or lender? I'm getting off track and into the loans, but it kind of really does relate to exhibits a lot of the time if you're doing loans with that. And just any other notes about what the object was. Let me just get back to the exhibit. Yeah, so as you're going through, like I said, with the description, this is all of our blurb for that exhibit. And it's gone in and just a really quick description of what this is. So when I'm creating a new loan, or a new exhibit, I put the full exhibition name in here. I'm going to go into the sandbox to do a fake one. New exhibition. Your exhibition ID number, it can be totally made up. Doesn't need to be a number. Just needs to have something in there. I tend to do it starting with the year, and I've come up with a formula for it that works for us, just to make it easier to find. Hopping back to Fairfield for a second. But let me go just to straight find exhibitions. So this makes it easier for us to kind of see if that helped or not. It made my screen bigger, and I think it made it smaller for you guys. Yeah, that's probably better. Making it more legible, hopefully. Okay, that's actually a little better. So if you're scrolling down and just looking for something, especially if I'm looking up like, oh, I know this exhibit happened within the past 5 years, but shoot, I can't remember exactly what it was. I could search for it, or I just scroll down and go, oh, I know it was before Dearly Departed, but it was after Columbia. Oh, okay, here we go. It was the Hunt Club. Okay, so I can go right to it there because it sorts. I've got it sorting on identifier right now. So having the year in there really helps. You can always sort by date and search other ways, but again, it's not something that you really need to have something really in depth and really extreme and complicated. Just whatever is going to work for your institution, for your records. Exhibition name, I will usually do, oh, I was creating a new one. I'm going to do what I wish I had the bookmark of my other computer because I have an exhibition name generator that I just tripped across somewhere, and all it is a blank screen. It says, okay, create your exhibit. And it comes up with like the most bizarre, ridiculous exhibition names that are usually like this long, but it's got that colon in there. It's got the whole 9 yards, and it makes absolutely no sense sometimes. But I do not have that to hand right today because I don't have it bookmarked on my home one. So your exhibition name, I'm trying to think of what we've got a lot of in here. I'm just going to say views of Connecticut. And I make this like the actual what we want that name to be, the whole thing, the full with the colon, with the correct capitalizations and formatting and all of that stuff. Put in whatever your blurb is. Even if you don't have one yet, I usually will just start something to just have a record to go with. I actually don't really use the exhibit part of it other than dates and sort of planning as related to other things until we get pretty close to the exhibit opening or after it's open. I kind of go in and tidy a lot of this up. But it is still a good way to kind of keep it in your head about what you're looking to do for the exhibit. This exhibit date, we're going to go, it's going to open June 30th and run until September 14th. Now, the exhibit dates. This is a thing that is keyed in to your locations of your objects. And it'll automatically move them within their object record. So let me go back to Fairfield and go to that Alice one that doesn't have it changed yet. And I can show you kind of the history with that. Well, that's actually a good example because that has to, I know exactly where this is and it needs to go back next week. So this is a game, like a card game that we used in the exhibit. Its current location is still saying that it's in Alice in Museum Land because when I go into locations, it inserts the exhibit into your location history. So if you've got items that are in a temporary location or a permanent location, any of that, it'll show that in here. So it had been at offsite storage at this date. We moved it back to main storage for something, and then it was in the exhibit. It does not add it back into any of these other places because that only keys in if something has a home location where the little house is. So that's one way I go through and start assigning actual home locations to things is when I run into something for an exhibit, I put that home location in there. So I know that where the actual home locations versus the temp or the permanent. And once the exhibit's over, it just automatically puts it back in the home location. If you have something that you've taken out of your gallery space, building, whatever, and put it somewhere else temporarily, you can continue to add that in there and then do kind of a return to home thing. I'm going to go into, because I'm in the midst of doing that for our toy shop exhibit that we just had. So I can show you the live version of that. Oh, and with the exhibition ID number, I won't do the whole exhibit name up there. I'll do whatever we use in-house as a reference to that. So some of these names won't necessarily make any sense. When you go down, images. Oh yeah, the Floral Expressions was a costume exhibit, 200 Years of Women's Power Through Fashion, but it started out as just being all about flowers, so it says flowers, which won't make any sense to anybody else having a costume exhibit, but we know what that is, and the whole title's there. Was I just looking toy shop? So I've got 27 related objects for the toy shop. I'm going to go look in the spreadsheet of location confirmation. So far, I think I actually moved everything back at this point, but you see a lot of these still say library because exactly that we moved them out of the gallery and temporarily are storing them in the library until they can go to their home location. The one that's not in the exhibit anymore, so that's good. Let's go to the Lincoln logs. And that doesn't have a big one. So you can see with the slinky here, its current location is at offsite. Here, this is the home location. If you go into location and look at the history, you'll see where that is. And I didn't even have it as a home location before this, but now that I'm putting it back, I know where that home location is, so I can put it right into this. And I am kind of zipping through a lot of this. This is just kind of an overview of what you can do. At some point, we'll probably do another like full training on stuff like this because there's a lot of components to putting together all those weird modules in the system to kind of help all this work. Because the locations within the object records, along with the loans, along with the exhibition, along with searching in sets and that kind of thing. Yeah, so our storage location, I had it permanently located there. I turned it into a home location because it says that right there. Trying to think of one. Oh, you know what? I have a good one, actually. I gotta find them. It's the little rabbit that kind of kicked off Alice, made it into this exhibit as well. This little guy. And especially because he's been in a couple exhibits, he's got a pretty good history going on. So I can look at this, and we had put him in the library temporarily. He went into Alice. He went back to the home location, but it doesn't say because I hadn't made it a home location yet. Went into the toy shop. Now his home location is this box, which is in the library. I've just moved that box to the library. So it's, you're mainly usually only interested in this bit, but if you ever want to look at something further, you can be like, oh yeah, wait, this little guy was in Alice too. Okay. And it kind of moves him around. There's also, when you do have a home location and something's not moved back there, there's a really handy little button up here that shows up next to update location as return to home location. So all you have to do is click that little button, and there's a date option there too. So you can say it's today, or you can say, oh, I actually put that back on April 1st. So you can change the date to April 1st if you want to keep your dates straight over on the right-hand side to see when this was actually done. Getting back to exhibitions for a second. So if our fake one, the exhibition location is going to be at the museum, the big gallery. Again, this is just a free text. It doesn't go to anything. I'm just going to put a note saying object list almost finalized. C set on views. Just notes to ourselves kind of thing. So then when you get into relationships, this is where you can add related objects the same way that you add them to other things as well. So if you only have a list of like 3 or 4 things that you're checking as you go, you can just, type these in as you go. There's different options for bulk editing things, and that gets more deeply into sets and into batch editing, which we can talk about if you guys want. That's up to you. I'm going to touch on the sets a little bit. I have no idea what's in here for this. I'm just going to put a bunch of views. Oh, and there's also, when you add an object, you can say exhibited. And I had added derivative used to a bunch of things. I think this is across everybody, which just means like the actual image isn't framed and hung up on a wall, but we used it in a panel somewhere. So it does still relate it to that thing. Because, you never know when you're going to get a question of someone coming in saying, I was at this exhibit. It was really cool. You guys had a picture of like a lighthouse by a thing. And you're going to be like, I don't remember we're putting that in the exhibit, but it might have been in a panel. So if you kind of go through and see what was linked, even just as the derivative being used in a panel, you'll be able to find it that way and note that it was part of it. The one thing about this, because it's done this way, the system doesn't know that it's not physically being put in there. This is just kind of a type donation. There's probably a way to program it to do that. Like if derivative, then don't move it. So it will still show like that actual physical thing is being put into the exhibit, which can mess you up a little bit. So it's kind of up to you whether you want it, whether you feel this is useful to add and use as part of the exhibits. We're going to pretend this is a whole physical show.
Hey, Diane, I was playing with exhibitions, and I used that derivative use for like when we had like a copy of something, like we didn't want to use the actual thing, but we still had like a scan, and that was helpful because at least it showed that, yeah, I used it in the exhibit, even though, because it does come up in that related objects list that, so I think it is helpful.
Yeah. And that's exactly for that purpose. I wasn't even thinking of the copy part, but that too. Yeah, exactly. When you have the fake one in there and people will come in and be like, you had this thing out. You're like, no, it's still in storage. What do you mean? Oh, no, we had the actual copy, or like a copy of the thing in there. Okay, so now I've got all of these things linked to the exhibit. So you can go in and see that I've got 3 related objects to this. Of course, it's nothing we have an image of, but we're in the sandbox, so that's weird. So it's, you're not always going to get that. So you have all these things grouped together to be able to pull it and see where things are in your show. 3 objects, all of this stuff. I'm not going to get into loans more this way. So this is like the very basic bones of doing the exhibit, and just more so a good way to record your exhibit and do that, record what's in it, versus necessarily planning. I tend to use the sets more for planning an exhibit. We started doing this a few years ago. Actually, when we first started getting the system, we started to do it in here, but it didn't make a lot of sense because you couldn't make other notes or move things around or add and delete as easily or see anything or pull all the things up together. It was just kind of well, this is good to record it, but how am I going to go and look for stuff? Let me go back to Fairfields, and I'm going to go into manage my sets. For purposes of this recording, sets are a group of items that you can put together yourself for whatever purpose you want. It does not permanently link them in a catalog-y kind of way. It's just a fake grouping of stuff that you have a reason to group together, whether it be to look for an exhibition. I do workflows with this about things that need like condition reports or record review or things like that. So it's not anything that's like a super permanent part of the record as far as like, this is always the condition report for this kind of thing. So I'm going to go into all sets. And again, I'm in Fairfield, so you're going to see a boatload of stuff, both by me and curators and things. But this is where we do a lot of our exhibit planning, because that way we also can all see it and make changes to it really easily. I don't think we've got, our next show is going to be on taverns. Oh, we've got one started. I don't know if there's anything in there. Okay, yeah, so there's a few things in there. Oh, let me get back to the list for a second. When you're in your set list, the easiest way to go through, because I've got 7 pages of stuff, and you can see some of these are just grouped by lot number because I was working on a project. So rather than having to scroll down through everybody, just search in what you think your name was for this. They've also got, I think I've got the floral one going. Yeah, floral inspiration. There's a couple going for that exhibit that we had. And also for our toy shop, we had a couple going for a couple different options. And then our last exhibit, our current exhibit, is Dress to Impress. And we started out with it being special occasions. we made a lot of changes to our original list, but I kept a copy of our original list just for our own thing. At some point that can get deleted because again, it's not super important in the grand scheme of the life of the object. And then we had to pull out a few for like a show and tell. So I made another set up there after that. One thing to think about with when you create sets, and there are a couple office hours on sets and training on sets, same layout as the other ones. All your stuff is in the middle. All of the nuts and bolts is over on the left-hand side. You'll see here we're on the items part. If you go up to basic info, it gives you the basic info about the set, whatever we're calling it. One thing, and I say this every time we talk about sets in relation to exhibitions, especially, it's very important if you're creating something, make sure that you've given the right people access or people you need to have access via the user access or group access. This was something that we got caught with when we first started using this. I'm sitting there talking to the curator going, no, I added like 3 things to your set last week. No, I haven't seen them. What do you mean? I added 20 things. I didn't see those either. What are you talking about? Because we hadn't given each other access to the set, so we couldn't even see what was in the set. We couldn't even see the set. So that's always important to make sure that's in there. I know we've got a couple of videos, especially with intro training, and I think office hours as well, on setting up user access and group access. One of ours that I called is Fairfield Admins, which is basically the curator, me, and the librarian. And that we're all kind of like admins on this. So I just group all of us together. But make sure that you have given people access to be able to see that. Because if you don't do a set as being available to everybody, you'll be the only one to see it. Okay, let me go back to items. So we've added some items in here. You can do like a faux sort. Say we want this to be the headline thing. You can move things up and down. It doesn't really do anything other than if you're downloading a PDF, like a list of something, with the accession status, you can do really handily for this. Give my location. Yeah, like that same location confirmation list, you can download it as a PDF. I may have to reshare the screen. So I don't know that it'll pick it up. Yeah, so it shows what the output is for this. You can go into the folder. And you just have to trust that I'm in the folder, and I'm going to open it in a second. So you'll get your kind of snapshot list of all the objects coming through and where they're stored, and that kind of thing if you need to go pull them. I usually will download it to an Excel file so I can kind of manipulate the Excel file and sort things the way that I want to go find something, especially if I'm going to our offsite storage. I can bring my laptop, but it's much easier sometimes to just have a list from an Excel so I can go down and check. And usually what I'll do is I'll sort on the current location to kind of group everything together. So I know that I'm in section C, or something like that. Or in the museum that I know I'm down the right aisle in the right boxes. And that just kind of gives you like a summary thing. There's a checkbox also, or checklist also, that's just is formatted slightly differently. Let me get back to this guy. This. The one thing that we do need to get updated, and this is on my list way down at our wish list thing, is to get that same kind of hot link that you have from exhibits over here on the side. So when it says like number of items, that it'll pull everything up, because otherwise you can't do it directly from here. You can do it in a different way and search for it and pull everything up, but doing it this way you can't do it from here, which makes no sense to me, but that's okay. You can go in and do a batch edit from here, which I find really easy for getting to the point of once the exhibit's open, I can take that tagline and that credit line of the exhibit and add it into all of these. I just add them as notes in mine. And I can just add it in there rather than having to go and copy paste into every single record. Yeah. Pictures, I'm just checking. Yeah, that's actually just user set, but that's fine. Oops. So it's basically just to get things grouped together so you can go through and see them. So we can look and say, okay, all right. So for the upcoming exhibit, we're using that one, we're using this one, we're getting that portrait worked on, we're probably using this. Let's put that up closer to where some of the objects are that are related. Same as this, and it's just a kind of easier way to do it for that. I can't remember if I have this in here or not, because you can search on a set to have it pull up objects. And I don't know if I have one set up. Once you get it obviously linked to the exhibit and get all those in, you can, oh, that's one thing I was going to say. I don't know if it'll let me back up to this. That's one thing you can say. So if you batch edit and you want to do relationships, related exhibitions, add to each. I don't know if we actually have an exhibit in here yet. Oh yeah, so this is our temp name right now. So I can go into this one, click it, and I can link all those objects into that exhibit all at once without having to go through and add each one in individually. So now if I go into the Benson house, sign, actually I'll go into one that actually has a picture because it's more fun. Oh, it didn't go to that one. It doesn't want to do it, does it? Still image. Oh, we'll go to the letterbox because I know that was on there. Okay, long way to get there. So now we can go into relationships with this and we can see that that's now related to that exhibit. That was a long way to get to that. Because you can just do all of those things in that set all together and relate them versus having to go in and type 2017.18 into every single thing. And depending where you are in your exhibit, if you start out and you're like, nope, I definitely want all these things, you can do that sooner rather than later. Or like I said, I kind of tend to put more of this together when I get towards the end and have everything in there. Get all my toy shop stuff together. In theory, I don't know that I did add those all in yet. I'm putting right now, oh yeah, my exhibition line down here in notes because I don't have a dedicated field for that right now. So I'm just listing all the things down here in like a list, like a timeline list. So I think this little guy, yeah, should have a bunch. So he's got his list of Alice Museum, Land, and Welcome to the Toy Shop. I'm keeping my eyes open for like an exhibition history field to see if we can add that in at some point because that would make the most sense and it would be in the right place. But that's very low down on the list, partially because it'll be really easy for most people to fix later on if we end up adding that as a field if you're keeping track of this somewhere else. So this is a super, super fast overview of exhibitions that as you can see, gets into a lot of other aspects of this. That's good to pick up on. Does anybody have any questions about exhibits or anything to do with this? Or if you're good, do you have any questions about anything else at this point? And I'm going to stop recording for now.
I have a question about something else.
Sure.